My name is John Herder. I had this great detail to interview some knowledgeable residents, lifelong residents of Frankfort, Illinois. I'll introduce the people on our panel. To my far left is Happy Bentenhausen. To my immediate left is Alan Mauger. And I will tell you personally, I saw him play shortstop, and he was as good as anybody that just finished the World Series, that's for sure. And Jerry Warning on my immediate right, another lifelong resident of Frankfort, Illinois, with a real famous name in Frankfort, Illinois. And then finally, a late arrival was Ralph Eisenbrand, and he's on my far right. And these four gentlemen are going to, what we intend to do is talk about their recollections of Frankfort, Illinois. They don't have to be, it isn't necessary that they be, absolutely historically precise. In other words, if they miss it by a couple hours or a day, some important date, we'll give them a little leeway there. But the thing that we do want to get from them is their opinions and what it was like for them growing up in Frankfort, Illinois. The first, and we're going to start with Happy. I got some bullet points written on the sheet in front of each one of them. And the first one is, actually, I told them it's optional to give us their birthday. And then if they choose to do that, which I'm sure they will, then I would like to know about the house that you grew up in and what it's like today, that house. Okay, Happy.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I've started Frankfort School in 1930, and about 450 people in town, because there was a sign down the end of White Street that told us that's the truth. You knew everybody, you knew the name of their dog, you knew what church they went to. I was raised by my grandparents on the Thompson farm, which is on Colorado Avenue, and a little bit of it's on the south side of Route 30 also. I was raised in that house that was just torn down a couple of years ago and made into a home for, I don't know, it's for children that need help, is it? There's whatever it is. It's across from the Bollowart farm where the Lincoln Way East is. At that time, it was gravel road, and it was used by everybody. It was used even by the people who robbed the Frankfort State Bank that time. And they went down Colorado Avenue, gung-ho for wherever they were going, but they wound up in the cow yard, and my uncle jumped on the horse wondering what them people are doing down there. Well, it helped with the sheriff and so on and so forth, and then people were taken care of and hauled into Joliet jail. So the story goes from my grandpa and my Uncle Herman. But Frankfort School is in my memory yet today. Nellie Brandt was the first teacher that I had, and she lived at the Eder Farm. Now, where is the Eder Farm today? I wonder if everybody knows. That is the property where Carey Motors is now. That was known as the Eder Farm. Well, how many acres it was or not, but up in the top of the hill, that's where the Brandt family lived at that time. And she would walk to Frankfort School also up White Street, and it was, I don't think anybody could ever live the good times that we had during the Depression times as far as family was concerned and friends. It was different, and we try to get back there every now and then to relive it. It doesn't happen like it did.
Well, Happy, now we know your house is now famous for two reasons. For you having been born there, and that's where they caught the bank robbers. So now we'll have to put out two plaques.
I lived there with the family from 1924 until 1935. Then we moved over to LaPorte Road on another farm. But I never did find Sherman's horse out there as a
kid. We think we know where it's at. All right, Alan, how about you? Where was your first home?
Well, I was born on 139 Nebraska Street. actually born in Silver Cross Hospital.
Okay.
And Dr. Hedges was my doctor, deliverer. And I lived there till I was 6. Then we moved to the other end of town, which was like, going on vacation at that time, down at the end of the street on Pacific and Hickory. And lived there for 6 years, and then moved back to 136 Nebraska Street, which is where I lived till I got married. So it's only been 3 houses, and all 3 are still standing. All 3 are in pretty good shape, I guess.
Okay, now, do you remember that the last one you lived in, do you remember it caught on fire?
Yes,
On Christmas Sunday?
Yes, I do.
It was,
Yeah,
it was a
yeah.
Christmas Sunday, and Frankfort, of course, had a volunteer fire department, and there's never a good day for a fire, but if you could pick a good day, it would probably be a Sunday because everybody was in town, and I think they put it out really quickly, didn't they?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wasn't that the Christmas tree they started that?
Yeah,
A
it was
wreath
the
or-
Christmas tree.
or-
My dad was burning the Christmas tree.
Oh, okay.
In the fireplace, and then
'Cause I
the
remember
sparks from that caught the curtains, and the rest is history.
Right.
We went on, so that was at 136. We went over to cross the street that day to 139, and Gus Schrader, Orville Schrader lived there. And we sat there and drank coffee and watched the house be
Burned
partially burned down. Yeah.
Well,
That was fun.
the firemen told me that several of them were in church, and they jumped up and ran out, and I often wondered what the preacher thought he had said wrong. But there was a siren on the water tower. It was attached to the outside of the water tower,
Right.
and I'm sure that set off the alarm to let everybody know there was a fire that needed to be attended to.
Exactly right.
Okay, Jerry, how about you?
Well, I started out at the house at the township center. We lived in that house. The house is still standing, although it's altogether different from when we were there, And I was actually born in Chicago. My mother had 2 sisters in Chicago, so I was born at Cook County Hospital. And but we lived there at that farm. Judy has a picture of it. with
Little
Ralph-
Judy Hanson?
No, this other
Oh,
Judy.
Judy Schultz.
Too many Judys.
Yeah.
And it,
Never too many.
it shows Route 30 before it was even paved. And my father, there was a tunnel going under Route 30 where he would take the cows. I can remember seeing it. And because all the farmland was on the south side. And but we lived there. Well, it was all woods where we lived there. You got a picture of that whole farm, I think.
People should come in and see it.
They should, yes.
Ask for it. Ask for the famous farm that Jerry
The
Warning-
famous farm, that's it.
that Jerry Warning was born on. All right, Ralph, how about you?
Well, I've only been around this town for about 80 years. So I do remember a lot. And one of the things is that the house that I first lived in was on Bowen Street. And today it's called West Bowen Street. There were no house numbers then because this was 1938, before World War II. And the village didn't have house numbers at that time. Very few people know that it was the Lions Club that came through during World War II and established house numbers for all of the local residences and businesses. So eventually it was called 17 West Bowen. And I can remember moving day in 1942 when we moved from West Bowen Street to East Bowen. But at that time, it wasn't East Bowen either. It was East White Street. So it took a while for the village to get straightened out on the streets and things. My dad apparently built a house on East Bowen Street with a lot of lumber and stuff that they salvaged from farm buildings at the Arsenal between Joliet and Elwood. Because I can vaguely remember him coming home with a trailer behind the car loaded with lumber and stuff. And during World War II, lumber was hard to come by. So that's apparently where he got that from. So we had a nice little house on East Bowen Street. He even built I would call it a garage with 2.5 car building in the back. And it was a workshop on the one side, which I spent many an hour fooling around with things on the workbench and with the power tools and stuff. But it was nice. World War II was interesting, and I enjoy telling like my kids and my grandkids what it was like living here in this town. The population was less than 400 people, and we knew just about everybody in the community and where they lived, and we knew what they drove and whatever, you know. So it was a great time for us. But you talked about that siren in the middle of the night during World War II. If they called out the firemen with the siren as kids, we kind of thought it was an air raid because we'd heard a lot on the news radio about the bombings and stuff over in Europe and that. And that was our impression that, don't tell me they're bombing Frankfort or what's going on here, you know. And I can remember blackout drills when my mother, at a certain time in the evening, would go around and pull down all the shades and close the drapes and then turn out the lights. Maybe had one lamp lit on the kitchen table or something. But the whole town darkened down here and all of Will County, you know, and
That's
all
true.
of this part of Illinois. We went through those things. Al, you remember those
I
times?
sat on what is now John Herder's house on that front porch on
Yeah.
a swing with my aunt when the blackout took place.
I remember the blackouts.
Yeah.
Well, I found it interesting, Ralph, that Frankfort, Illinois at that time was 400 people only? So,
That's what it said on
yeah,
the sign at that time.
okay, so we can assume, probably for sure, that Frankfort became a great destination city for people that they wanted to move their families and raise their kids here. Because if you just look at the population explosion between then and now, my gosh, it has always been a great place to raise your family. Everybody always wants to move to Frankfort, Illinois. I've been on trips and people would say, "Oh, I live in Frankfort," and then I'd say, "Well, where do you live?" And then they would come up with a name of a subdivision that I probably didn't even you would have recognized it because you delivered mail to it or not.
So you have
That's
1%
possible.
of the population of that time
Sitting right here.
Yep.
Yeah.